Welcome to the Field Experience presentation for Child Growth and Learning by Annette Hudson. Many books have been written on the developing child, so this presentation will be in no way comprehensive. Rather, this will be a researched overview of the developing child from birth until 18 years old. Click on the video now as we begin. Let's begin with birth. The birth of a tiny human is a wonder to behold. From their tiny cries to their tiny little hands and feet, they are precious bundles of joy, sure to make their family fall in love with them. However, they have so much to learn and growing to do. As you can see from this chart, babies grow and change exponentially right away. Just imagine that in a few short 9 months, your baby will have gained the strength and control to crawl. By 13 to 16 months, they will be walking. Better put up all your stuff. All the while, your baby is watching and learning intently every day what this world is all about. By 6 months, he will sense the connection between hands and the objects they hold. When he is 13 months old, he understands the relationship between objects and their use. That's a lot of figuring out. Another amazing development is language. Your baby begins with crying and by 2 years old has a vocabulary of about 300 words. It is very important for you to talk to your baby and make eye contact. They are copying you. And lastly, there are many stages to your child's social emotional development. I will just mention a few. Around 6 months, your baby will show fear to strangers and excitement to familiar people. This fear could continue until 12 months. By 2 years old, your toddler wants to make new friends, but isn't sure how to do it. Mr. Schoenberger, the early childhood director at Bright Beginnings, said one thing to keep in mind is that each child has their own specific timetable for developing. Only if there is a huge disparity should you be concerned and visit a doctor. Be sure to watch the video at the beginning of each stage. We will now look at the years from 3 to 5, which I call the preschool years. By 3 years old, all of your child's baby teeth are in. There are so many physical things they can do by this age. Kicking balls, running, hopping, and climbing stairs. By 4 years old, they can use the bathroom by themselves. This is a long way from the stage of diapers. From ages 3 to 5, your child is learning many things at a rapid rate. They know their colors and shapes and rhyming words. They understand night and day and what a calendar is. By 5 years old, your preschool child knows about 1,500 words. They can sing songs and recite nursery rhymes. They can retell a story while following the pictures. Children this age have good conversational skills also. Lastly, their social emotional selves are developing. They understand the idea of taking turns and playing in groups. By 5 years old, they are more compliant and control their emotions better. I think these preschool children are ready for school. The next group of children we will discuss I am calling middle childhood. This encompasses ages 6 through 12. I am going to read this next slide. Raising school-aged children can be awesome. It is so fun watching them try new activities and cheering them on at athletic events and applauding them at recitals. However, there can be some frustrations as they are learning to accept their strengths and weaknesses. There is definitely more independence. However, making good choices and exercising self-control is not always that easy. This stage is so important though, because it is laying the foundation for adolescence and adulthood. Now click the arrow and watch the video. I'm a computer lab supervisor at Prescott Elementary. I see all 560 students in my lab each week. I have really been able to observe the differences in these school-aged children. Physically, there are so many changes for ages 6 to 12, but one thing I notice about most of them is they have so much energy. I wish I had some of theirs. I've also noticed how the 11 and 12-year-olds are beginning to mature. After my students do practice on the typing program, they are allowed to play some school-approved games. This is when I really notice the intellectual differences. The younger students are content with some pretty simple games, while the older ones get bored easily and are always looking for more challenging games. By the time your child is 6 years old, he will know 2,000 words and will be reading. By 9 years old, he will know 3,000 words. By 9 years old, he can compose sentences and paragraphs. By 11 or 12 years of age, he has an expansive vocabulary and can understand figurative language such as similes or metaphors. The social emotional aspect of your child from 6 to 12 is interesting. The one I remember most from my own 4 children is the collecting rocks stage at age 6. It will be so helpful for you to study these charts so you can be aware of the immense changes coming to your child. We're going to move on to the last stage before adulthood, perhaps the most difficult stage. As soon as I read this quote, be sure to click on the arrow. The agony and ecstasy of adolescence. Growing up is a terribly hard thing to do. It is much easier to skip it and go from one childhood to another. F. Scott Fitzgerald. If you'll notice on this slide, there's about a year's difference in the development of boys and girls, with girls developing earlier. Where do I begin? So many changes, so much moodiness, so many changes taking place in their minds and bodies. One I want to highlight is there is no fear of death. There really is scientific evidence that the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that is associated with reasoning, has not fully developed. Teenage crazies are science, folks. As your child is beginning their last stage of childhood or adolescence, I think it is good to remember this one thought. This is a time for developing and testing their own values. To do this, a teenager must reject parental values. This is probably the scariest and most difficult part of parenting. If the parent can know this ahead of time and as calmly as possible, still love their child and firmly enforce the rules anyway, the relationship should survive until the child becomes so mature that now adult and child become peers. My friend Jennifer Metz, a teacher of 25 years, put it this way: don't let students or your children see you lose confidence in yourself. You have to be tough while also letting them know that you care. Friends and members of the opposite sex become much more prevalent as a child enters into adolescence. This is a good time to begin having conversations with your child about healthy attitudes and behavior involving their sexuality. There is likely to be rebellion and conflict with the family as the adolescent is trying to become separate. This can be a painful time, but continue to do what is right for your child and hang in there. They will grow out of it. I'm going to read this slide as a wrap-up and make a few comments. As children grow and mature, there are many joys and dangers along the way, especially during the adolescent years, which is a time of considerable physical and psychological growth and change. There are real concerns about eating disorders, drug and alcohol abuse, tobacco, and STDs. While it's true that family relationships change through adolescence, teenagers still need their supportive family for many reasons. They are experiencing so much rapid change that the family can be a secure emotional base. And believe it or not, parents' life experiences and knowledge can be really useful to your child. Strong family relationships can go a long way towards helping your child grow into a well-adjusted, considerate, and caring adult. I really agree with this paragraph. Let's look at the chart on this slide for a minute. Because a teen's frontal lobes are not grown together, they really are more prone to addiction. Kids who drink before the age of 15 are 5 times more likely to develop alcoholism or dependence. Teens are 4 times more likely to crash a car than adults. Kids average more than 10 hours of media time every day. That's about 68% of their waking time. They really need to be getting at least 8 to 10 hours of sleep per night. Can you see how adolescents still really need guidance from their parents or guardians? However, the letting go stage is the next stage. As I was contemplating and agonizing over my last 2 children growing up and leaving, a good friend of mine said, "Don't worry, they'll be back and they bring more with them." 13 grandchildren later, I think she was right. To sum it all up, I encourage you to enjoy this journey of a lifetime, friends. Enjoy these children of yours. They will be grown before you know it.